I think differentiation is an absolutely critical element here. You mentioned about MG Select on price. You mentioned about Tata on powertrain. And we mentioned about Maruti Suzuki actually wanting to do everything for everyone.
Marketing folks often define a brand as a brand is a promise.
Right.
So technically it's the same promise which is delivered to you from a different outlet. And I think that is pretty unique anywhere in the world.
At the end of the day, the consumer asks that question, what difference do I get at Arena outlet or a Nexa outlet? I think the differentiation is something that is yet to be seen very clearly.
You could argue for why not spend more money here. Imagine if the service experience was wow. He'll be constantly talking about that more often. He or she, the customer, would be talking about that more often. I mean, hello and welcome to Deep Drive, our weekly podcast powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, this week we are driving deeper into a topic we've actually spoken of in the past. Nexa and Arena, the premium outlets. Well, this time, however, we've got a lot more adding to this premium and regular channel strategy. You have MG coming in with MG Select. You've got Tata with Tata.EV. You've even got bike manufacturers doing this, adding to the fray. We've had, of course, the pro biking outlets from Bajaj, but you've now got Premier from Hero. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. The strategy, the thought behind this, and where is it all headed. I'm Sergius Barretto.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Sergius, with a complex market like India, with customer traversing from an entry buyer to a uber luxury, super luxury end of the market, and with so many different products, vehicle makers are often compelled to look at a sharper positioning of their portfolio. But, whatever examples that you've mentioned, we've barely seen a differentiated channel strategy really succeeding in India. And the biggest example, like you started mentioning with, was Nexa and Arena. On its own, Nexa definitely is a big brand in that sense, right. Sells over 500,000. But would you call a vehicle sold out of Nexa outlet as a Nexa or a Maruti Suzuki car? So that's a question. Then, we've seen Hero MotoCorp attempting with Premier with just, low single digit penetration of premium sales. Does it even warrant a differentiated outlet? And come to MG Select. They are catering to a different end of the market. Credit to them that we at least have a differentiated portfolio there, so that, the channel partner as well as the consumer finds something different to sell. But, jury is out there, remains to be seen. It's a very niche end of the market. At the end of the day, it's the same channel partner who comes out with a differentiated outlet and a differentiated brand. So remains to be seen. But, so far, whatever we've seen, it's not been transformational, so to say, but it has been rather incremental in nature. And at the end of the day, the consumer asks that question, what difference do I get at Arena outlet or a Nexa outlet? I think the differentiation is something that is yet to be seen very clearly.
No, absolutely, Ketan. There's a lot to unpack, obviously, on this episode. And before we get into the depth, also, we have to discuss the fact that, this kind of split within the same brand is pretty much unique globally. There have been attempts by automotive brands in various markets at this thing, but it's not generally followed at all. In fact, most of them have wound down. If they do create a bifurcated experience, it's because the brand is also different. So we have Toyota and Lexus, for example.
Right.
Toyota decided, they needed to have a premium brand experience and a premium sort of offering, created the Lexus brand, completely separate in every which way, whether it's the websites, whether it's the dealerships and, things like that. Same goes with Honda, Nissan. They've all created their premium brands.
Acura, Nissan, Infiniti.
Exactly. Everyone's had their premium brands. However, when it comes to India, what we're seeing is these brands are not creating a separate premium brand. So Tata are not creating a separate, they're calling it Tata.EV, but it's still Tata at the end of the day. Maruti Suzuki, as you correctly said, it is a Maruti Suzuki that you just happen to buy from something called Nexa. Right? It's the same brand, so therefore it's the same brand promise. It's the same badge. Marketing folks often define a brand as brand is a promise.
Right.
So technically, it's the same promise which is delivered to you from a different outlet. And I think that is pretty unique anywhere in the world. We're not seeing that really happening, but it seems to be growing and catching on in India. Perhaps because, like you said, maybe India's too complex a market.
Fragmented.
And too fragmented. It's almost like one country or many countries together, like Europe is, I often say. India is like a Europe. We've got each state is a
Different
country.
continent. Yeah,
Exactly.
A different country.
We both, I think, have different native languages,
Absolutely.
eat different foods, but we're both Indian, right?
Absolutely.
So perhaps that's driving that sort of brands here to do this. But I think what we need to discuss is, so while they're doing this, bifurcation, I think the problem really, I mean, there are benefits, of course, and we'll discuss those, but the problem really is where they're creating the split lines.
Right.
Is this being created on a certain personality type of the vehicle? Like Nexa started with that, the Ignis, different kind of vehicle in terms of its personality.
S-Cross.
S-Cross, absolutely. But then now you suddenly have, let's say a Victoris, which seems catered to masses. They want to get out there, get the Creta, spec even better than the Nexa thing. So it's blurring the lines. Then you have MG who are creating a bifurcation on price.
Right.
Right. So it's very clearly a price definition. And then you have Tata who's creating a bifurcation on powertrain. So I think that's really where, of course, there is no right and wrong, but where things are getting to be quite confusing. And I think brands really need to double down and figure out, do we need this bifurcation first, and where is it for me?
Right, I completely agree, Sergius. And I think everything starts with the consumer. And, taking the reference of Nexa, when it started in 2015, the aspirational quotient was very different in India, right? And we've spoken about how India is growing so fast and how premiumization has caught the fancy of the Indian buyer with the boom of internet and connectivity. Everyone's aware of the next big thing that is out there. So probably the aspirational quotient that was there in majority of India in 2015 is very different from what it is 10 years down the line. And what was aspirational in 2015 is hygiene today. And what's aspirational today probably is not linked with the body type, features, experience. I think defining the differentiating attributes in a brand is the most critical factor. And given the complexity, the biggest challenge or the biggest problem that I saw when I was analyzing each of these brands was that, there are overlapping products. There are overlapping showrooms. There are common badges. Take the case of Hero for that matter. On one end, they are trying to sell a Harley there. On the other, they're trying to sell a Vida there. Now, just imagine the intent is to sell a global brand out of the same outlet and a electric scooter, which their intention is to make it a lot more affordable. Now, today,
Going more mass.
it is going more mass. Now, and plus, whatever that they have in between, their premium motorcycle, they really have a very small cachet in the market. So, one wonders what exactly is Hero trying to achieve by coming out with a premium outlet. Yes, I understand that at the end of the day, you need different models and volumes out of that one outlet for a dealership to make that outlet viable. But there's so much of confusion there. There's an American heritage brand. There's a view at the future with the EVs. And there's that new Hero who's trying very hard to break into the premium end of the market and appeal to the youth. Now, in that outlet, I see so many different consumers. And I really wonder, what are the common attributes there? So I think differentiation and defining the brand tenets is an absolutely critical element. And probably, FMCG industry is one industry that Indian automotive industry could take inspiration from, wherein everything starts with the consumer needs, and brand tenets are then defined basis the needs of the consumer. But here, in the automotive industry, we've often seen the product guy and a brand guy at odds with each other. And if there's difference of opinion there, then what we get is a pretty layered common brand tenets, which can actually appeal to a wider audience, and hence the differentiation and sharpness of a brand is lost. So I think differentiation is an absolutely critical element here. You mentioned about MG Select on price. You mentioned about Tata on powertrain. And we mentioned about Maruti Suzuki actually wanting to do everything for everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Ketan, what you said is absolutely correct in terms of starting point should be the customer, right? Which also then therefore brings me to another question is, has the customer really asked for this or not?
Very pertinent point.
Yeah, because, very, very often these expectations are created by the brand themselves. I mean, I remember, I think this was back in 2004 or something, when there was a few dealerships of Opel where they decided to offer beyond the tea and coffee, to customers. Somebody said, hey, let's sort of do a little bit more. And they had a soda dispensing, so you could have Sprite, Coke, and then hot beverages. So you could do soups, which was, the packet one with hot water. So different soups. Okay, great. It became a hit. But after it became the expectation, and if a customer is not served the soup or whatever, then it now is a disappointment.
Absolutely.
The customer never came in asking that I wanted soup, I wanted tea or whatever. But if you're offering him and he tells his friends and his next person comes in and doesn't get that, it's now a disappointment. I mean, as they say, the sort of outcome is not dependent on the reality. It's on the expectation, actually.
Absolutely.
So you're raising expectations. Does the customer even want this? Case in point being, I would start with, let's say, Tata, with the .EV showrooms. I love the showrooms, right? They're beautifully done. The color schemes, really, really classy. It just smacks of class, right? It just looks so upmarket, gorgeous, very earthy also in that sense. The flow through the showroom, very, very nicely done. But the point is, why shouldn't, if you and I were to buy, let's say I'm going to be buying a Curve EV and you're buying a Curve petrol, why should I get that experience and you not?
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense to me. An EV buyer, yes, he was a different kind of beast. He was a different kind of animal. In fact, Tata's insights was that the EV buyer was spending a lot more time in showrooms.
Right.
When he came, they were a lot more in-depth, insightful. They want to know a lot more. In fact, I remember Sailesh, the head of Tata, he very nicely put it, saying that a successful transaction in a petrol scenario or a diesel scenario is you've sold the car and the customer doesn't spend time with you, he doesn't come back to you. Successful in EV is the customer's coming back to you constantly because he's coming back, he's giving you feedback. Hey, we're doing this. This is what I've noticed with the charging. And they noticed that customers were very more connected to the brand, EV customers.
Right.
I think that was the early adopters.
Yeah.
Right. It's not going to be your everyday customer. And as you move away from the early adopters, setting up showrooms for just a small set of customers who will disappear, it doesn't make that much sense to me. I'm glad they've not gone whole hog. I think how many showrooms are there right now, Ketan?
In single digits, right?
Single, I think so. Yeah, I think maybe 7 or 8.
It's hard, Sergius, with that kind of volumes, throughput. While you were talking, I was just imagining a swanky showroom in Gurgaon, upmarket, really large, expensive. How do you make it viable? And we're talking about electric vehicle penetration at about 5-6% at its peak right now. But for that showroom to make money at that volume, clearly the dealer would have needed significant amount of support from Tata Motors. And this question was asked to Mahindra and Mahindra when they were going out for their Born EV electric plan. And there was a debate internally there as well, but they eventually decided that, let's park them all in one showroom and have a differentiated section for electric vehicles. Because I think the cost is another important factor when you talk of a differentiated channel. You're talking about an all-new building, and invariably it is premium, so it has got to be upmarket, which means the rentals are crazy.
Right.
The kind of executives, I remember Maruti Suzuki had gone and brought in people from hospitality industry, from the aviation industry. Clearly, the pay packet in that industry was significantly higher, and the expectation was definitely higher. How do you bear that cost? How do you bear the cost of rentals? How do you ensure that there's enough volume which incentivizes a dealer to have a better experience for the consumer? And invariably, I've seen that whenever a dealer loses money, and we've seen it with fringe brands, whenever a dealer loses money, the experience at the dealership is there for everyone to be seen. the customers then have to pay for extra on service, extra on spares. The vehicle actually do not deserve to be serviced or a part to be replaced, but they are compelled. So I think the viability of the dealership plays a very important role. If a dealer is viable, he's able to deliver a consistent experience, and especially at the premium end of the market, the demands are crazy, and any slip of a foot there, I mean, you are there all over social media. So I think there's a lot at stake, and at this juncture, I still have question mark with regards to viability of these outlets.
Right.
I do know that it's the same channel partner who's expanding.
The same owner. Yes.
The same owner. The same owner is expanding into a premium outlet, but they are stretched, especially during difficult times when market is slow. They're really stretched. And even for smaller brand, I mean, at least now a mainstream brand, you have vehicles which are going to be serviced. So you have some steady stream of revenue coming in. But with brands with smaller volume throughput in the market, with limited vehicle to be served at the service center, it's challenged to make the business viable.
Right. And, Ketan, the other point for me in a bifurcation with powertrain is it's not future-proofed.
Yeah.
Right. It's built on the early adopters. So on the past, maybe what you saw, it's maybe right now viable or making sense for the present, but for the future, I don't see that happening. So you've built something on the past, it's successful here in the present. Future, I think powertrain shopping would, there'll be more cross-shopping across powertrains.
Okay.
Yes, there will, of course, always be some petrol customers, some diesel customers, some EV customers, but I think there'll be more cross-shopping. I mean, we've noticed that amongst us in the office, right? I mean, suddenly earlier we were always, okay, no, I'm buying this petrol, whatever. Now we are like, should I buy the EV version of it or not?
Yeah.
Right? So that's slowly going to happen. And I think this bifurcation is a little more risky in terms of, for what the customer wants, because the customer may not know what he wants at that point in time. He might be open to an EV and an ICE, and now he's got to go to two sort of showrooms.
And I think after the initial experience, naturally so that we've seen, Tata Motors reviewing and recalibrating its plans with Tata.tv. And naturally so, at the end of the day, you want the channel to make money. And there were multiple experiences that the company would have understood over a period of time. And it all boils down to viability of the dealer. It all boils down to, is that what the consumer is asking for? And I was talking to experts before coming in for this recording, Sergius, and an important point came through that, a significant amount of money is spent on the sales process. Right. But if you were to really look at the life cycle ownership of a consumer, that's, in a low single digit. Majority of his time is spent at a service outlet. Right. Now, at a service center. Now, you tell me, at the service center, you may have a swanky showroom, you may be served with, cappuccino and, people serving you in suits. But at the service center, you have the engineers catering to you. Yes, there is a lounge out there. But beyond a coffee and a bottle of water, what exactly does a consumer? I mean, 90% of the time, a consumer in his ownership life cycle is spending at the service center. And I believe if you are spending so much money on the facade and the consumer interface in terms of showroom, I guess not enough attention is also paid on the ownership experience and the life cycle ownership.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right, Ketan. In fact, you're creating two brick and mortar structures. One where the customer visits once, and the other where the customer might visit 5, 10 times, depending how long he keeps the car. Yes, the argument is very often also that the customer doesn't come in. In some cases, yes, they have chauffeurs or drivers who will take the car in, or you might do a home pickup. But there are a lot of customers, especially when talking of brands like Tata and Maruti, who will also drive in themselves. And
Absolutely.
You're right. I mean, you could argue for why not spend more money here. Imagine if the service experience was, wow, he'll be constantly talking about that more often. He or she, the customer, would be talking about that more often. I mean, it's definitely, I think, food for thought.
Now, I'm very of the thought that, one other factor that what we've seen in the Indian automotive retail changing is that large showrooms are actually giving way to more compact showrooms. We really do not need, showrooms spread over 5,000 square feet and having a dozen car as a showcase. Because of the viability reasons and rentals going through the roof, we've started seeing the showrooms becoming smaller. And even as I expect the vehicle makers to improve their the service experience, I'm very wary of the fact that at the end of the day, that is also a cost that a dealer has to bear. That's something that a dealer partner has to shell out. So, but again, the question is of the consistent ownership experience, and which is where you have two different brands or other two different outlets, similar kind of cars, two different experiences. Why does arena buyer does not deserve to have a Nexa kind of experience, right? And that is what today's demanding Indian consumer is asking for. And okay, valid that the aspiration level are different and demands are different. But then how do you differentiate? Again, it boils down to the differentiation.
No, absolutely right, Ketan. In fact, that's the other point we should discuss is that why does, especially in Maruti's case or maybe in Tata's case, why am I getting a differentiated experience when I'm paying the same money?
Right.
Because there is a huge price overlap in the products, right? I mean, the MG way, I can see some sort of very clear bifurcation. Somebody's paying 50, 60 lakh rupees. Yeah, okay, sure, he's got a different experience. He or she has a better shopping experience than if I'm going in with 10 lakh rupees. It happens in every sphere. You travel by plane in travel industry. Yeah. I mean, if you pay more, you get a better seat, business class, you can lie flat. I have to sit up, and in economy, things like that. So there may be some justification there, but it gets harder when you don't have this clear price differentiation, because you're creating a experience differentiation. Your deliverables are different to the customer, but he's paying you the same money, right? Sometimes less. I mean, and we've seen that, for example, again with let's say Maruti or with Tata, you could be at a regular Tata showroom, paying a lot more money than a guy going to buy an EV, a smaller segment EV, let's say like a Punch EV, but he's getting the better treatment.
Yes.
Whereas an ICE Harrier owner or a Safari owner is supposedly going to the lesser of the two showrooms. So, and then that brings another thing into it, which is what I've seen, reactionary things from brands. They start upgrading the experience. Right. So they're like, oh, okay, look, maybe we should do something about the regular outlets. And we saw that with Arena and, Tata. Okay, it's good in one way, you're uplifting that experience, but now you uplift the experience of the regular outlet, then you need to create a bigger differentiation again with your premium channel.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just, unnecessarily sort of creating these differentiations. I think from what we've discussed so far, I think it's safe to assume that I think we both agree that maybe on price, it's easier to bifurcate your retail outlets.
Yeah.
Rather than if you're going by, let's say, powertrain or product character / I don't know, or even like Hero, like you said, that's a good example. I think there are way too many brands sometimes in one showroom in the premier outlets. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the Zoom scooter, the higher CCs, the 160, that's also sold there.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got Vida, you've got Hero, and you've got Harley as well.
Harley. And again, the other important element is, should a Suzuki badge be used both at Arena and Nexa? Mm-hmm. Should a Hero badge be used both at its conventional outlet and Premia? Should a Tata badge extends itself to .EV? Now, sometimes you do feel that, brands are spread too thin. And especially in case of Maruti Suzuki, when you have a portfolio which is as large as 19 brands, right, 20 brands, I do understand that you actually want to simplify it and declutter it. But what remains, where the challenge lies is that there's still no brand differentiation per se.
Right.
I mean, one of the examples that I had recently heard, that it could have probably made sense for Maruti to have a Maruti Suzuki Arena as a brand, and probably which is rooted to India, which is mainstream, which appeals to the Indian hearts, which is for the Bharat, which is the hinterland. And Nexa could have been the Suzuki Nexa. So you give Maruti name to Arena and you give Suzuki name to Nexa, and Nexa stands for technology, Nexa stands for global, Nexa stands for something that's upmarket. And that way you could probably have two different badges or two different brands. But having same Suzuki out of Arena and same Suzuki out of Nexa, there's too much of overlap. And with the Victoris, I've started to question what is the future of Nexa. And exactly what you mentioned, if you raise the bar of Arena, definitely it defeats the purpose of where does a Nexa lie. And now for Nexa to succeed, one, you have to redefine its brand tenets. Who is it catering to? And you got to have the right models. Now, when you look at Maruti Suzuki portfolio, what premium models do we have at this juncture? If it's mainstream SUV is out of arena, what are the premium models then we can expect? So, I know it's a complex subject because consumer needs are different from each state to state. So it's probably easier question rather than finding a solution to an answer like this. But from a consumer standpoint, which is what we are discussing, there's still, for him it does not matter.
Absolutely. In fact, Ketan, you brought up two important points also. One being space. Yes, Maruti has a large portfolio, right? A dozen plus kind of
18 badges, 18 brands.
18 different brands. So just how much space would you need to display even one of all of them?
Correct.
Sure, I understand that. But it can be done, right? And like you said, different ways to do it. And others are doing it. I mean, if you look at Mercedes too, they've got the same. They've got the A, the B, the C, the E, the G, and then you've got corresponding SUVs, which are, again, all your GLA, GLB, GLC, GLE. Then you've got the AMG lines, you've got the
Maybach line.
Exactly. So you've got separate cars there as well. And world over, they retail. I mean, an A class can be bought from the same place as a S class.
Yeah.
Yes, they do have certain lounges. These kind of concepts where. So, for example, in fact, in Germany, I think you and I were both there.
Yeah.
Right. The manufacturer outlet, right? So where you can go in and customize your S class or any of the top end vehicles as they call them, the vehicles that are offered through the customization program. That kind of makes sense,
yes.
Because you're going to spend a little more time, you need a little more in-depth insight.
Your own car, make your own car.
Exactly. So that kind of bifurcation is very clear. I'm buying a regular S class. I want to tailor it to me. Okay, I go there to the tailoring kind of area. So they are doing that bifurcation. But otherwise, you can still buy an S class and A class on the same floor space. And I think that's the way to kind of go. Because you're presenting your brand, as one. It's the same brand promise. And like you said, because otherwise then questions start like this. Should one be Maruti? Should one be Suzuki? And that's basically going back to, is it Toyota and Lexus? You're creating separate brands. Then it makes sense, right? But I think, yes, if it's the same thing, my feel is always, it's always nicer to have the same kind of showroom, the same experience, the same website even.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you look at the website, I was just going through the MG Select website. Very different in its UI and look and feel, like the Nexa is. But to the extent where I felt it was maybe oversimplified. Now, that's a personal taste maybe. But it just didn't look as good as maybe the MG one.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have to spend so much more money in creating a separate UI, UX kind of thing for your website. So that is a challenge, right?
I agree. And the other important factor here, which makes it difficult for vehicle makers, is the democratization of feature sets. India often, or other car makers often used feature sets as a way of saying this is a premium model.
Right.
Now we have the ADAS level 2 coming into a sub-4 meter vehicle.
Right.
We have the sunroof, the screens, the tech, the transmissions, you say what we have in the top luxurious cars, we have it in the mainstream market. And hence, everything boils down to the consumer experience.
Right.
Because there's very little to differentiate. The other important factor where we have kind of seen a reboot at Mahindra is the design, right? So probably what else can you differentiate over? It's design, right? So if features are going to be, homogeneous and it's a hygiene factor everywhere, what do you differentiate on? And what a specific brand differentiate from the other within the same fold? I think it's getting a lot more complex, and probably, you really need a deeper marketing lesson from an automotive industry lens perspective to look at channels and brands.
No, absolutely. In fact, Ketan, you mentioned Mahindra. It just came to my mind that Mahindra have created this separate badge, similar, let's call it, for the EVs, right? It's
Twin Peak.
It's a play on the Twin Peak. I think Twin Peak is what they call the regular badge, the ice one, and the Infinity Loop is what they call on the EV. Both look very similar. They've created separate badges. The BE don't carry Mahindra on the front.
Yes.
Right. They have the BE on the front, the Born Electric, and but they sell from the same showroom.
Showrooms.
So I think there's so many ways to, as they say, to cut up a pie. So which is the right way? No one has the answer, but I think one thing, like you said, is customer first. Does he want a differentiated experience, right? If so, what is the differentiation based on?
Absolutely.
Right. I think we can safely assume that, yes, price seems to be a very easy, yes, but also very clear, distinct sort of point where you can create that, experience.
Demarcation. Or two outlets.
Exactly. Like MG are doing with Select. It is going to be a price-led kind of bifurcation. You have, I think, probably from the 40 lakh onward, Ketan, is that where you think
they intend to bring in the
happen?
Yeah, they intend to bring in the D SUV,
right.
Which is likely to sit above
the Gloucester.
The Gloucester. So I assume that the entire intent is probably be that bridge between the mainstream premium portfolio and the luxury badges.
Right.
And I mean, I do feel that with a roadster and a limousine, they do have a differentiated product and a differentiated price. So I think on the face of it, whatever little conversation that I've had with MG Select dealers, they appear to be happy. But it's early days, remains to be seen. I think they've done their homework in terms of sharper differentiation well, but it still carries the MG brand.
Right.
And at the start of the millennium or a couple of decades back, the top-down strategy was always seen as a way of entering the Indian market. So yes, one does expect a sort of a rub-off effect onto the mainstream brand, but then in the process, you also question as to what does the MG brand stand for, right? So there is differentiation. There's definitely sharper understanding of what Select stands for and what does the mainstream outlet stand for. But remains to be seen the sustenance of the initial excitement that we've seen with the badge.
Absolutely, they'll have to really pay attention to pipeline management, because while you've created two sort of retail outlets, very distinct, nice and clear, you've got to now ensure that your factory, your R&D has enough to supply both, because you don't want to end up with a situation where you've developed 4 products, but they just happen to be, for Select. And then these dealers are like, hey, hold on, we need something new here.
Absolutely.
So you're going to have to balance.
It's been the biggest challenge for Maruti. You mentioned that. I mean, in fact, I really question, I mean, given the fact that we also keep an eye on the future product portfolio of each of the companies, when I look at the future product pipeline of Maruti, Sergius, I barely see a product price above 15-20 lakh at Nexa. I mean, and so how do you build it? So there are more compact, subcompact SUVs planned now. Do they go the Ignis way, or wherein quirky looking vehicle, differentiated design, probably have more bells and whistles and come out of Nexa, or it goes to Arena because you want to capitalize on 3,000 outlets across the
versus
country,
700
versus 700 that you have. So it's a dilemma, and how do you feed the beast that is already 500,000 big across the country, and sustenance of that? Yes, definitely the biggest benefit for Maruti is they have millions of vehicles that a dealer can service, so viability is addressed. But you got to then how do you build the brand Nexa? So there is a definite desire to build the Nexa 2.0. There's a need for MG to look at a pipeline of models for its mainstream channel and the Select channel, and that's the most difficult exercise, which calls for a lot of investments. And in our market, if a product fails, it kind of pulls back the company by several years. So yes, dil mange more. We desire that there's more products and there's sharper understanding, but it is a complex environment for automakers to operate in.
No, sure. In fact, it's going to get more complex too, Ketan, for Maruti, I think, with the Escudo, because we know it's going to go to Nexa. Seems logical. It's going to be very high priced. Yes, it's an EV, so there is a lot of clear, distinct differentiation. Very clear cut. Okay, it is an Nexa product built for Europe, as we know. It's a very different kind of appeal. But it's also a Maruti, right, at the end of the day. And there might be customers waiting to buy an EV from Maruti, in the sense that, okay, we are reassured it's a Maruti. across the country.
Yeah.
Not just in the 700 odd places that you have Nexa, but in some of the
Yeah.
sort of hinterland and smaller towns too,
Yeah.
who would put their faith and trust in Maruti. But now don't have a dealership close to them or at least let's say very easy to reach. Because interestingly, Tata, I remember about a year ago, they had shared some data. I don't know what the percentage is now, but they said over half of their EV sales came from actually the C category.
Smaller cities.
The smaller cities, right?
Yes.
So it was the smaller cities that were buying the more in terms of
Because you don't drive all that much. Your city is smaller. Charging infrastructure is not a challenge.
You have your own, generally have your own house. I mean, if I look at where I live here and my sort of home in Goa, here you're in a high rise. How do you charge? Your society has to get in. Goa, almost everyone lives in a house. Very few buildings are such around. Everyone has
the dedicated charging.
So that could be something I think of a bit of also this thing for Maruti, because there would be some customers in smaller towns who'll be waiting for an electric Maruti.
I'm glad you brought that point. I have a contrary view there. While the mainstream market may want a Maruti EV, will an aspirational EV buyer want to own a Maruti EV? That's another question.
which could also
That's another question, right?
Yeah.
Because Maruti, we associate Maruti Suzuki as the most reliable, the most accessible, the best value out there. And the attempt with Invicto we saw did not really take off. They did try. We've seen them trying to do that with Kizashi. We've seen them with Grand Vitara.
Yeah.
Now, again, so yes, the management does mention that there is a larger customer set which will value a compact EV as well for a city application. But where you have the likes of Mahindras and Tatas raising the bar on the aspirational quotient with design, with tech, with features, I'm really curious to see the impact of the Maruti EV sold out of Nexa.
Yes, the Escudo, that's an interesting angle too. I mean, would rural India want, or the smaller towns want electric Maruti? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. Would, like you said, they, maybe a buyer for the third and fourth kind of car now evolved in the buying process, look at a Maruti again as an EV. So yes, there are, I think, a lot of sort of questions which perhaps only time will tell. But in any case, I think, Ketan, for the Escudo, perhaps it's not too much of a worry, because it is a global product. So it's not being engineered, built specifically for India only.
Right.
They've got exports which is driven out of India. India is the home room for it.
Yes.
So we know that is clearly built into and factored into the business case.
Yeah, so that's the differentiation, that, it's a global product meant for Indian market. So Indian market gets what the European market gets. So true point. I mean, it can work for the brand.
Yeah, both from the business point of view and the customer.
Yes.
I guess, the business is also safe in that sense.
Yeah.
The other thing we should discuss, Ketan, is also Tata Motors. Yes, they've created .EV as an outlet, but there's another brand coming up. It's being, as we've discussed, I think in the past, and we've had stories out, sort of maybe delayed or, timelines in tweak. Avinya.
Yes.
Right. That is going to sit above Tata Motors. It's going to be a distinct brand.
Yes.
So that's, I think, the correct way to go.
Yeah.
Right. It's the ideal way to go. Let me not say the correct way to go, but it's the ideal way to go. You're creating a distinct brand, just as Toyota did with Lexus, just as Honda did with Acura. So you're doing the same. So Tata is doing an Avinya, and I think it will nicely slot in also with Jaguar and Land Rover, because if you look at it currently, there is actually a sort of gulf between, there's a gap between Tata Motors and the JLR portfolio.
Right.
There is a
same space as MG Select.
Exactly.
And whatever initial the concepts that we've seen, they are differentiated. I mean, there's nothing like that in the market that we've seen, the Avinya and the Avinya X. Yes, definitely there's headroom for Tata Motors to grow there. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think that strategy is really right. They got to be Avinyas. Right. And I also like what they are doing, very, very subtly bringing in Tata. So it's not going to be a Tata Avinya apparently, from at least what the last I interacted. But the signature, the DRL signature, if you notice, it was a large, elongated, actually T.
T, yeah.
It's a nice sweet
touch.
nod there to where the whole
Which
room is.
speaks to you, but at the same time, it's not loud.
Exactly.
It's very subtle, yeah.
It's in nowhere Tata, Vinya, or whatever, but you do know it's from the house of Tata. So I think that was beautifully done in terms of the signature style, which apparently will carry across all the Vinya models.
Right.
They will go to sell out of separate. It goes without saying. I mean, they haven't announced this, but it goes without saying they will sell.
The idea is to have a separate brand, so it should have
brand.
a different channel.
Different channels. So that would be the ideal. I think the ideal way to do it. But Ketan, let's also conclude that if you're not doing an Avinia, like Tata are doing a distinct brand, yes, great, the ideal way. But if you're not doing one, what would be the ideal then bifurcation? We start with the customer, yes, but what from the customer? From the price that he or she is paying, or is it the character? I think we can both agree it's the price, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think, a customer goes in the market with a certain budget in mind.
Right.
And within that price band, a customer looks at different options available.
Right.
Yes, sometimes we do see people extend themselves a little bit. So I think price is an important factor. And of course, understanding the consumer need. I think design is also turning out to be, whether it is meant for...
But it's hard to. That's subjective. Design is subjective,
I
right?
I agree.
So,
what I mean to say is that the demographics of India, the youth of today is a lot more expressive.
Right.
The matured India is a lot more subtler. Who believes in buying a Skoda or a Volvo, who may not really be wanting to own a BEV or a Mercedes Benz, so to say. They don't want to arrive, but they still want to say that I have something which is top notch and upmarket, but I don't want to scream. So I think there's different Indias. For the youth, it may be a lot more expressive design. For a matured audience, it could be a lot more subtler design. For an outdoor person, it could be a lot more butch, imposing presence. So that's how I see customers and the market evolving, or if you were to typecast specific segments of the market.
No, that is true. But there is where you will have a difficulty in bifurcation.
I get it.
Because
why not an expressive design at an entry level,
exactly.
and why not a subtle design at the top?
I get it. It's very hard. It's subjective. So I think price is also fair.
And even a matured audience is youth at heart. So
yeah, exactly. So it's way too complex.
I
there.
understand. But yeah, so I agree with you. Price and
so separate brand is the ideal, because you have a separate brand tenants, and you've got a clear brand promise, distinct. Clear price is another clean way of doing it. But I think things like powertrain or maybe vehicle personality, these things are perhaps best avoided.
Lesser overlapping products is ideal. Yes, we do understand that vehicle makers do try to sweat out the vehicle architectures and try and do different body styles out of same, so that you get better return on investment. So there is rationale behind, there's a logical business rationale behind it. But from a consumer standpoint, probably sometimes it does not, cut the ice, if need be.
Right, Ketan. So I think we've kind of arrived at. Well, not the formula, that there is no magic formula to this, but maybe perhaps some thought in terms of doing premium outlets and doing a premium retail strategy. What do you think? We'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Where is the best place to cut this pie in half? Is it price, as we were discussing, altogether separate brand? What should brands do? Like perhaps Hyundai, you could weigh in on that. Do they do a separate outlet? Do they sell their, let's say, Palisade and things like that, which are supposed to be coming to India through the same showrooms? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Fire away in the comments. And of course, while you're there, remember, subscribe to the Autocar India channel. Hit the bell icon. You'll be notified every time we post a new video, including this podcast. And the podcast goes up every week, Saturday, 11 a.m. So look out for us. And you can also hear the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So thank you for watching and listening.